A leader's opinion of self is equal to and congruent with the people who are following them and are around them. And so 95% of people believe that they knew themselves and their opinion of self was congruent with how other people saw them. Then she had the students go out and said, okay, what's Jean's real opinion about Dr. Keis? Well, it was only congruent 10% of the time. That means 85% of us are delusional. So why are assessments so important is because we actually don't know that we don't know that we don't know. And this is just really a window of creating this awareness. We use three terms: self-awareness that leads to self-management, that leads to self-mastery. So I know who I am, I know my propensities, I know the things that take me out, that might even offend me or trigger me. And now I'm managing self so that I can be intentional with behaviors to lead you, lead self, et cetera, et cetera.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today, we're going to talk about leadership self-awareness, specifically the journey to leadership mastery. When you think about your own journey and evolution as a person, are you self-aware? It's a challenge for a lot of us. I wasn't always self-aware. It took me a long time to really understand that I had to grow myself. In fact, my wife could probably tell you many stories, but as a leader, if you're not growing, you're not going to be able to serve the organization. And this isn't just for the CEOs. This is actually for all of the executive leadership team, all of the VPs, the directors, the managers, and even our frontline employees. If they're not evolving, they're really not going to play at their highest level. And so today we talk about leadership self-awareness with our special guest, Dr. Keis. He's with Consulting Resource Group. We go into the personality assessments they use and the assessment tests that they've created and really perfected to help people understand themselves. Now we go a little bit further than that because you don't have to use the tools, but that's one of the things, one of the approaches you can use. But you can also use different forms like a 360-degree feedback, or coaching relationships can give you a really deep sense of leadership self-awareness. All those are on the journey in the service of you getting to leadership mastery. Now there's another step in the middle, but I'll let you lean into today's episode so that you can discover what this is. My name is Gene Hammett. I am known as the growth guy. I help leaders really grow beyond where they are today and evolve into the CEOs that your company needs and deserves. I help those executive leadership teams actually create a higher sense of alignment. The work and tools we've used and the methodologies actually speed people to a level of trust, collaboration, and even impact and execution. And we also do manager to leader coaching. If you think about your entire leadership team, are they getting all of the leadership skills that they need? And are they able to talk about that in a way that allows them to grow? Well, that's a part of leadership self-awareness, but what we do to help clients do that is really kind of amazing. If you want to dive deeper into that, just go to coreelevation.com where you can see more details. We've got some free videos that will help you understand exactly what the 3 roadblocks are to growth as a company if you want to create predictable, systematized growth. Now, here's the interview with Dr. Keis. Dr. Keis, how are you?
I'm very good. Good to see you again, Gene.
Great to be here. I know you've been on the show before. Before we kick this off and go into our core topic around leadership and really all things development of leaders, tell us about Consulting Resource Group.
Consulting Resource Group, I'm fortunate to be the owner now for 22 years. It was founded in 1979, and what really participated its creation is that the founders didn't like Myers-Briggs or DISC, so we created our own personality assessment for our psychology students. It then has now become the #1 personality assessment as rated by participants globally in 13 different languages. And then it just grew into being an aggregator or a publisher of multiple assessments to develop the whole person. So here we are 45 years later, 13 different languages, 30 countries, and we really serve the professional developer, the leader, the individual to be able to take themselves to the next level, but holistically, including health, wellness, self-worth, leadership skills, personality, values, all these different components into my personhood.
I know when I was writing the book, How to Have Tough Conversations, one of the things that we actually didn't include in there because my wife's like, we're not the experts on assessments. So now I have you to come in here. Being able to assess how do you engage with someone based on what you know about yourself, what you know about others, is a pretty cool way to kind of read the tea leaves inside of that conversation Tell me a little bit more about how your assessments helps a leader communicate better.
Well, when we think about it, are we nature or nurture, Gene? And so we believe we have something that we're pre-wired in what we call natural predisposition to interact with the environment, which includes time, people, tasks, and situations. So we have a certain leadership style, not right, not wrong, just is. And then all our individuals who are around us have a certain following style, meaning they have a certain predisposition as well, and said, how can I actually understand myself in terms of what my strengths are? Because we believe in a strengths model, but what are some of my challenges? And then also, what are the motivators that drive you, Gene? What's really important to you? And a lot of times, if I'm trying to lead based out of my perception or my bias or my window, I'm going to miss the mark. And so there was a study done by Talent Star. It said, what percentage of leaders would realize their full potential without this knowledge? 2%. So only 1 out of 50 will realize their full potential without this knowledge of my personhood and who I am and what I'm doing. And you were talking about parenting earlier. Same thing for parenting for your 17-year-old son or for yourself. And dad, we're all different and unique. And can I understand myself and others?
It's a pretty good connection between, I think, parenting and leadership, because even though we're not supposed to be the dads and moms at work, the way we engage other people to take ownership of things is very similar. At least the way I think it is with my kid. If I tell him to clean his room, it rarely ever happens. But if I ask the right questions, if I engage with him in a very, kind of meaningful way, he's usually like, yeah, I'm going to take care of my room.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there was a study done in Canada, and they said what percentage of employees believe that their leader is competent or incompetent, pardon me, and it was 70%. So, if we're to kind of go into this self-awareness piece, and Dr. Tasha wrote the, New York Times bestseller Insights, it said what percentage of people know themselves, including leaders. And so what she meant by this research, Gene, is that a leader's opinion of self is equal to and congruent with the people who are following them and are around them. And so 95% of people believe that they knew themselves and their opinion of self was congruent with how other people saw them. Then she had the students go out and said, okay, what's Gene's real opinion about Dr. Keis? Well, it was only congruent 10% of the time. That means 85% of us are delusional. So why are assessments so important is because we actually don't know that we don't know that we don't know. And this is just really a window of creating this awareness. We use 3 terms, self-awareness that leads to self-management, that leads to self-mastery. So I know who I am, I know my propensities, I know the things that take me out that might even offend me or trigger me. And now I'm managing self so that I can be intentional with behaviors to lead you, lead self, et cetera, et cetera.
Dr. Keys, this is fascinating because I know in the books I write and in the work I do as an executive coach, self-awareness is something that I want people to understand better. So let's just start there as we go through those 3 different aspects. What gets in the way of people really having a good sense of self-awareness as a leader?
Well, first of all, you have to be open to it. I was having lunch, dinner. Now, he's recently passed away, of the author of What Colors Your Parachute, right? And so Dr. Dick Bowles. And so he had 40 years in the career development field. And I said, why are people so oblivious to the career they want to go into or their items? And he says, because people are not willing to do the work. Most people, Gene, will invest more money in a movie this weekend than they will in themselves, generally speaking. The other one is, if you don't know what you don't know, then how can you react to it? So they avoid the questions. You also have to be vulnerable, meaning I'm open and willing to do feedback. And we were talking, off air some time ago about one of my colleagues, but also mentor, Dr. Marshall Goldsmith. And his leadership process is around stakeholder feedback. I'm going to get real feedback about how you're acting as a leader, and I'm going to give that to you. And when I give that feedback to you, the only thing you can do is say thank you. You can't argue. And I just had a new client, and I was working with her, and I collected, interviews and assessments from 13 different people. And I said, this is what people really think. No, you can't argue with this perception. I'm giving you how you show up and how you're perceived, and we have all these biases. So self-awareness is that I need to go on this journey to be open to actually hear how I really come across, and also dive into this area. If I don't look and seek to be self-aware, then how am I going to increase that consciousness?
Now, Dr. Keys said many people aren't willing to do the work. And I want to pause and reflect on that for a second. There's these things called blind spots. We're not aware of what we don't know. And if you can't do the work on those until you know what they are. So one way to get there is have conversations with the people around you and find out what your blind spots are. It's hard to know what questions to ask because you're not trained to do this, but you're going to, put it together, be intentional around it, and then do the best you can. Now, if you want to have a coach do it for you, they're usually pretty trained in this. They can help you see some of the blind spots. And it really shows up as patterns that happen from time to time. But you want to make sure that you can identify your blind spots and really help them. I know one of mine used to be my procrastination. I thought that I needed to clean my desk off before I did the work. I thought that I needed to clean out the whole office before I started on that project. The reality is, I don't need to do that. I need to just do the work. And if I have a messy desk, yeah, it's a little bit of a frustration, but that blind spot, understanding it and being able to really wrestle with that and grow from it is exactly what we're talking about. That's just an example in my own world. Hopefully it helps you really figure out what your blind spots are and how to keep moving. Back to Dr. Keis. So one tool behind that is these assessment tests, whether yours and others out there, and they probably all have their advantages. What other ways besides, you mentioned there, the second way is kind of through the interview process. We do a 360-degree feedback. Is there any other way to really try to connect to your sense of self-awareness?
Well, I think those are the two main ones that all of us have attuned to that are very important. Excuse me. The other side is that just look at your results. If people don't like you, if you have a lack credibility in the marketplace, or, our behavior has outcomes. And so if our outcomes is people don't, if you get them, let's say you get employee feedback, which is another feedback method, and they're not satisfied with your leadership. Well, that's already saying that you're not conscious or awake, that your behavior is being destructive, which is what I was working with this manager. I said, did you know that when you hold the team meetings, you demoralize everybody? No, I don't. I said, no, your behavior and what you're doing, these things occur. Now, here's the other side, Gene. In the assessment, and we talk about values assessment, we talk about personality, talk about wellness, how that can, and skills, is that sometimes the sin of omission applies. So I'm a leader and I don't say something. So I have a toxic work person on the team and I don't challenge their behavior. I don't hold them accountable. There was a study, and I'm sorry, I don't recall the source. It just came out. It said, what is the impact of one toxic person on a team of 6? And they said that will reduce the productivity by 40% of the entire team by having one single toxic person. So as a leader, if I'm not awake and aware of dealing with these things, then that's that consciousness. So those are the primary ones. Now, let me flip it back. Let me be the host for 2 seconds. What would be some other ways, Gene, you think you could get some feedback? I'm curious of what you would say.
Now, Dr. Keis was talking about toxic people, and I got to take this opportunity to talk about how to have tough conversations. This is the book that I wrote with my wife, Amanda Hammett, because a lot of people are toxic in the organization, and leaders need to have the courage to have those conversations. The courage is the first thing. You've got to be able to engage. Now, there's actually a phases approach in here. If you look at my tabs, I've got it listed here, but it's one of the early chapters in this book about the 4 phases. The first phase is really about you understanding what's going on. And so it's not that hard to have that. It doesn't take a lot of courage, just a little bit of courage. If you understand the phases, you'll be able to have more of the tough conversations, and you'll get a change in behavior more often because you've done it well. Back to Dr. Keis. Part of it is the coaching relationship. So you can get feedback from your peers, but I think one of the real advantages I have when I'm coaching someone is I'm not emotionally attached to the way they've always done it. I'm not emotionally attached to what triggers them. I have my own emotional attachments, my own triggers, but I can see from a different perspective that these others can't see. And I can give you an example. One of my clients showed up to meetings late. And of course, I noticed that a little bit, but when we gave the feedback from the team, it actually carried more weight from the team than from me, because he was like, okay, I don't want to be that disrespectful person to the team. So I think that was a third way, is having a coach that is trained in understanding blind spots and seeing the patterns over time, is just a different way to look at that self-awareness.
Oh, I would agree 100%. And I think, when we think about the 360 feedback that I was doing with this client, that was through the coaching methodology. In other words, I could deliver that in a way that wasn't linked to the senior manager, to other biases that were in that place. And you and I both agree is that if you're a leader, not having a coach really is leaving a gap there, is that high performers have coaches. There's almost no sports high performing professional sports person who doesn't have a coach. Well, why wouldn't we have that for leaders? And that's really, I love the mentorship, the consulting, the coaching that all blends together after doing this for 35 years, of just how powerful that is for people and how you can transform them. Now, the other side is we know that we want to coach over a longer period of time. You don't have one session and transform somebody. I mean, we do retainers that are minimum 6 months, but we like a year or even more than that, just to really take you on this step-by-step journey so you can, over time. So I think a lot of times when we think about feedback, if you try to consume everything in the feedback in one gulp, it is just going to bury you. So we want to take it piece by piece as we go through.
I love that. I want to go back to you broke it up into 3 parts. You have self-awareness first, and I believe it was self-management, and then it went to self-mastery. Let's talk a little bit about self-management. What are the core components of that?
Well, being self-aware is part one. So I tell this story, Gene. It says, if you're self-aware and you know you're a jerk, you're still a jerk. So if self-management is now, how can I manage this whole emotional piece? Everybody talks about mindfulness, but how can I manage my interactions now? So now I'm actually conscious, awake, and aware and intentional with what I say and what I don't say and how I say it in a way that is being constructive and being positive. And so this self-management piece is, okay, I'm self-aware that this is my personal style or this is my leadership style, but suck it up. That's just the way it is. I'm just not going to change. So the consciousness and awareness is just the condition. Number 2 is now, what am I going to do about it? What are the steps, the intentionality? So example is we teach a 3-step process to build credibility with others. Translating or reading others. In other words, you're constantly leaving me clues about who you are. Suspending is getting my biases, my predispositions, my triggers out of the way. And number 3 is moving towards you, what we call style shifting. And so, okay, what could I do to serve Gene, to build a relationship with Gene intentionally? I'm not changing who I am, but I'm changing my approach because I'm being the opposite of self-centered. So self-management is leading in this space where you're moving out of self-centeredness and you're moving in this place to be conscious, awake, and aware of what am I doing? What am I feeling? How is that impacting the people around me? And how are you responding? What do you need? And then, of course, the third step is, as I develop my skill set, I'm conscious and awake and aware of knowing what are the strategies, the approaches that would work with Gene, that would best serve Gene. Now, here's the reality. There are some people, no matter what you do, Gene, there are people that are just not going to like you. I mean, if you have a high level of credibility with everybody you meet, then you're placating. I mean, this is now you're the people pleaser, and we don't want that. But all I want to do is be able to improve my percentages, my effectiveness as a leader. And then there's some people on your team you need to fire because they're never going to fit, right? And so that's the other part of the leadership side.
Dr. Keis has been talking about self-management. And one of the things I wanted to add in here, it's a tool I use inside my own coaching, is about being intentional. When you are going through the journey of self-management, one of the ways to do that is to be able to write down how you want to grow or how you want to be more confident. I remember one of my clients many, many years ago came to me and said, I want to take my business from 4 million to 10 million. I said, great. Talk about what did it take you to get to 4 million? And he talked about his level of confidence to get to 4 million. I said, all right, what kind of confidence do you need to get to 10 million? He thought about it and he was able to frame it unshakable confidence. Now I share this story with you because I want you to really understand the power of words, but he's being intentional. He's calling his shot like a Babe Ruth would, right? He's pointing at the home run. When I'm unshakably confident, my ability to get this company to 10 million is going to just be natural. And I don't disagree with that. And so I'm asking you to be intentional as you go through this self-management phase and write down how you're going to grow. Be intentional. Write it down. What are the personal traits that you need to align with that make you get there? So all this is in service of you growing and evolving as a leader. Back to Dr. Keis. I like all that. One of the things that I think about this, and again, this may be personal for those listening in here, but there's some relationship connection between leadership and home life. And my wife and I have been married 22 years. We just celebrated 22 years of happy.
Congratulations.
And I paused to her on date night the other day and I said, I've been thinking about this. I think one reason why we are where we are and we really are connected to each other, it's even better than it was, when we first met, is because we've done the work on each other. We've been willing to face the truths and our shortcomings and the lack of communication, the lack of listening. These are all my shortcomings that I'm listing. And she agreed. Like we are happy and connected and love and intimate with each other because we've done that work. And I think people leaders have to do the work on themselves. And that's what I take away from self-management.
Oh, absolutely. And you've been around the people who haven't done that. And I've been in Fortune 100 companies and been a senior consultant for a decade for one of the companies, Sole Source Con. And I just said, how did you promote this person? Like why are they even in here? And then, when we think about that third level, which you might ask as the host towards me around self-mastery, is that it becomes seamless and really effortless to be able to operate, because now you know what the strategy is. You don't really, it's not effort and work. So, okay, now what does Gene need? No, I already know that. I've practiced this. I've honed my skills. I've equipped myself with my EQ, my EI, my skills to the point where this is just, and I don't say effortless, but it's now in part of my cellular DNA. I know how to do it. I'm able to see it. It's not something that's a burden for me. And I've developed myself to that level where I'm now a master in self-mastery of that.
One of the things that my mind was going to, Dr. Keis, is confidence in leadership is a very important tool. And I went through this myself. I felt like my confidence was hitting a ceiling that I didn't think there was much higher to go. But then I look back over the last year and I'm like, oh, I've grown even more. And that is a pattern that I've seen in myself, I see in my clients. And self-mastery doesn't mean that you are at the top level. It almost means like you're continuously evolving, but it doesn't take this much work because it's happening because you're continuing to go through probably the cycle of self-awareness, self-management, and self-mastery. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah. Oh, well, we're never done. Come on. Who have you ever met that's perfect, right?
Yeah.
And all I need to do, we have to ask our spouses. We've been married for 33 years, so I get that. And there have been moments as we go through it. Just ask the people closest around you. No. Ken, you've got some things to learn. That's also the mindset. We know that leaders really have a learning and a continuous development mindset. Not only should they have that for themselves, they need to have that for their teams. I mean, our most transformative companies and organizations is where the leader saw it as important to develop everybody in the company. A lot of times they don't know, we're just going to do this senior executives. We're not going to invest in the people in the front line. Well, hang on. They're the ones that are even if it's virtual or not, they're the ones that are engaging all the clients. Even if it's technology wise, you have to interact with each other. So organizations that really commit to self-awareness globally within the organic framework of the organizations are the ones that are transformed. And then it's never done. I mean, just think about what's happening in industry. And of course, this is a recording, so I don't know when you're listening to it now, but how AI has transformed how we think about things and how we need to transform our approach to business as a leader and just technology. I mean, I get this. Now, I'm not trying to date myself because I look very young on camera. And if you're listening to me, my voice is young. I know it is. So, but I started in this industry before email. I actually commuted from the West Coast to the East Coast for a year for Chrysler as their senior consultant because we didn't have email. So I was leaving on a flight on Sunday, coming back on a flight on Friday, and I did that for a year, going from the West Coast over to Detroit, just to do the work. Now, of course, this virtual world, what we're doing here now as a recording, wow, what a beauty that is, just to be able to evolve, to do our same work, but in a different way.
Dr. Keys, we've been having a great conversation around it's around leadership, but through the lens of kind of a personal development, I think. Looking at self-awareness, looking at self-management, self-mastery. I want to give you one more chance, and I know there's a free gift that you have for our audience. What else have we not touched on that would help someone evolve into the leader that they really need to be, based on your experience and your tools?
Well, I mean, obviously it's your attitude around it. It needs to be holistic. So we've talked about, personality or values. We do a wellness assessment. You know what? If you don't get any sleep, you're going to be grumpy. It's just not. So you have to look at the whole person. It's not just any little piece along the way. And then it's just continuous. And so you're okay with that. You're okay with the fact that this is ongoing and you're committed to that. In terms of the free gift, one of my other books that I've written is called The Quest for Purpose. And so there's all these skill sets and assessments, but we're going to give away my free ebook, The Quest for Purpose, under kenkeis.com/Gene. So you'll probably put it in the notes somewhere. It's KENKEIS.com/GENE. And you'll be able to download that free book. And in that is narrative. So the other side is that we believe in journaling. We believe in reflective pieces. So who Gene wants to be when he grows up. There was a Fortune 100 company did a purpose program for their entire staff, including minimum wage line individuals, because they knew that engagement was based on their clarity in life. And if I don't have clarity about who I am and where I'm going, how could I get there? How could I be fully engaged? And this is for everybody. So all of these combined really help to set you up to be fully realize your full potential in life. That's what my tagline is in life, is to help people to live, lead, and work on purpose.
Dr. Keis, thank you for being here, sharing your wisdom. Really appreciate it.
Well, it's always a pleasure to hang out with you, Gene.
Wow, what another great interview here for the podcast. Hopefully you took notes. Hopefully you got a better sense of awareness. I love that we broke it down into the self-awareness, the self-management, and the self-mastery. And keep in mind, just as Dr. Keis said, you're not ever finished with this. I'm 53 years old. I'm continuing to grow and evolve. Hopefully you feel that too. You should be able to look at yourself and be able to actually write down in a journal or write down in some way how you've grown from year to year. And if you're not doing that as a habit, you're missing out on an opportunity, because it's one of the simplest things you can do. It's absolutely free, but just write down your own areas of growth, what you've actually accomplished, what you're working on next. If you can write it down, then you're actually going to have a better chance to get there. My name is Gene Hammett. I am known as the Growth Guy. I'm really excited about offering executive coaching, leadership development across many levels of companies. And if you are curious about the work we do, just go to coreelevation.com, find a free video there about the work we do to help you unlock more growth, more predictable growth, and systematizing how you actually grow the people within your company. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.